Hey 7th graders, Mr. Chamberlain here with your first video lesson for the week of April 27th, 2020. Today's topic will be on cooperation and conflict on the continent of Africa. Before we get into the content though, recently you guys submitted to me documents telling me what you've been up to over the stay-at-home order, so I want to kind of fill you in on what I've been up to over this time. I spent a lot of time planning for the next several weeks of school and just kind of adjusting to teaching online, which is a lot different than what, of course, I'm used to. I've been having a lot of special family time as well, so we've been playing a lot of games. Uno, +4. All right, we're gonna make it blue. You done, son? Ton of basketball. I got an indoor putting green. I've been working on my putting stroke, trying to, make some more birdies this summer. All right, so let's get into it. So the topic for today is conflict and cooperation in Africa. So we're going to be taking a look briefly at some different conflicts that are taking place or have taken place in the past several decades on the continent of Africa. Some important terms that you're going to have to know for this lesson. The first one is ethnic group. An ethnic group is defined as a group of people with a common language, history, religion, and physical traits. Genocide. This is the mass murder of a particular ethnic group. For example, the Holocaust in Nazi Germany is an example of a genocide. Suffrage means the right to vote. Drought, a long period of time without rainfall. Apartheid, this is a system we're going to look at that took place in South Africa that were laws in their system that separated people based on race or the color of their skin. And finally, refugee, a person who flees to another country to escape persecution or disaster. So what is a conflict? Well, a conflict is a struggle between people. It could be a physical conflict, it could be a verbal conflict, but usually there's some type of difference that they have a difficult time overcoming. We're going to take a look at East Africa first. So there are some different conflicts that are taking place or have taken place in East Africa that I would like you to kind of take a look at. The first one is in the country of Somalia. Somalia is right on the Horn of Africa. And over the past 10 plus years, they have been involved in piracy, like pirates. And they don't have a parrot on their shoulder or a peg leg or a puffy shirt, but they are going out to sea and they are getting on board of ships that are carrying valuable cargo, like oil, and then they will take over the ship and they will hold it for a ransom. And the owners of those ships pay large sums of money to the pirates to get their ships back. At times, this has gone down peacefully, and there's been an exchange of money. They actually drop floating suitcases of cash into the ocean, and the pirates go out there and pick it up. And there's been times where it's become deadly and violent as well. The U.S. and India and several other nations worked together to try and put an end to the piracy back in the mid 2010s. And you hadn't heard about piracy for a long time, but in recent years, you've seen it kind of a resurgence there in Somalia. So that's one thing. Kind of modern day Blackbeards out there in the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, and in the Indian Ocean. Another one that I want to talk to you about, this one's a little bit more historical. It took place in the 1990s in a country called Rwanda. And it was a battle between two groups, the Hutus and the Tutsis. One group had the majority of the people, the other group was leading, and this led to a genocide in that country where hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people were killed by each side over these differences. Terrible death and destruction in that country because of it. A lot of the people who were victims of that, maybe who weren't killed, left the country to find refuge in another country like the Democratic Republic of the Congo. That's an example of being displaced when you have to leave your country for some reason. It could be a natural disaster, or in this case for your safety. That's called displacement. We've talked about, when we did our maps, about how Sudan has split up into two separate countries, Sudan and South Sudan, And one of your resources for this week will be a Google Slides presentation that has a little link for you to click a video to watch more about South Sudan on YouTube. It's a few-minute video. In Central Africa, I mentioned a minute ago, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This is a country that's had a really long history of civil war, corruption, and instability in their government. Lots of different groups trying to take over power. And this is also one of the areas where you see the blood diamonds being sold, or the conflict diamonds being sold to fund these civil wars that we talked about last week. Many other countries in Central Africa have suffered from years of political instability as well, where they just don't have a stable government or a stable ruler in charge. A lot of times there's dictators, corrupt politicians, or groups that are fighting for the power and continually trying to knock out whoever's in power and try to take over themselves. The one that I want to spend the most time on, however, is in the country of South Africa, and this is what your assignment's going to be about as well. The country of South Africa is the southern tip of the continent, and for a long time there they had an official policy in their government called apartheid. Apartheid is when you separate people based on race. So basically, they put people into a couple categories. You had white, which were like the European background population. Those are the ones that didn't have the most people, but they had the most power. And they made unjust laws and rules that favored their group so they wouldn't lose the power. In the other group, you had black Africans, Asian Africans, and other groups as well that weren't considered in that white group. And everything was separate. Where you lived was separate. Blacks had areas called homelands they had to live in, where conditions were very rough. The type of job that you could have, public facilities like restrooms and restaurants and stores were all separated by race as well. There was a leader who came out of this who fought early on against apartheid. His name was Nelson Mandela. And Nelson Mandela was kind of leading the charge against apartheid, and he refused to follow laws that he thought were unjust. A lot of people compare him to like Martin Luther King Jr. of the United States, but this of course is in South Africa. And actually they put Nelson Mandela in jail for 27 years for fighting against apartheid. Eventually, countries from around the world started putting pressure on South Africa to end this policy and to free Nelson Mandela. In the early 1990s, the policy of apartheid came to an end, and Nelson Mandela was freed from prison. And in their first election that was open to everybody in the country, because during apartheid only white people could vote, Nelson Mandela, along with a lot of other people, ran for the office of president. He was elected as the first black president of South Africa. So he spent his time in office trying to reunite the country of South Africa after years of conflict between different groups because of unfair laws. You're going to have a little article about apartheid and look more into Nelson Mandela with your project for this particular week or this particular lesson. So you're going to have a couple other resources I want you to check out. There's going to be a Google Slides presentation that has a lot of things that I talked about on it. There are 3 different YouTube videos for you to click on. They're short, a couple minutes, about some of these conflicts as well, so you can get a little bit more background information. I have an article about apartheid for you to read. It's a 1-page article. Some of the information came in your book. I added some other information in there as well for you to read to kind of give you a little bit more background information on apartheid. Once you have watched this video and you have looked at the Google Slides about conflict and cooperation, you've read that article, then you'll be ready to do your assignment, which is going to be a Google Slides assignment as well. So I'm going to share with you on the Google Classroom a template for the Google Slides. The title slide's already done for you, and then there are 4 additional slides where you'll be putting information that you've learned. One's going to have you take a look at apartheid, when it started, when it ended, and a little bit about it. Another slide's going to look at some of the unjust laws and what was unfair about those laws and how different people were treated based on the color of their skin. And then there's going to be a slide about Nelson Mandela. We're going to read a biography about him and add some facts. And then there's going to be a picture slide where you're going to find some pictures of Nelson Mandela and put them on there as well. So that's going to be the bigger of the 2 assignments for this week. Lesson 2 will have a separate assignment. It's a little bit shorter with 2 different parts to it. Make sure you check out the videos that are included in the Google Slides with a little bit more information about these conflicts. I want to remind you office hours. So office hours are twice a week, Mondays at 2 p.m. and Fridays at 10. Now here's how office hours are going to work. First of all, I would like you to participate because I miss you guys and I want to stay connected with you. We start right on time. So 10 minutes before, I will share the nickname with you on the Google Classroom. You go to Google Meets, you type in the nickname, you'll be joined in, and we will start right on the assigned time. The first part of the meeting is going to be me kind of just communicating some different things to you. So it might be some notes I have for you. It might be a bigger focus. It might be something to look out for. Just kind of like basic announcements. Then I'm going to take any questions you have. Your questions could be about the content. It could be about the assignments. It could be about something else school related. Any questions you have. And then once all the business stuff is taken care of, then if you want to hang out and we can catch up and talk non-social studies things, we can do that as well. I just want to connect with you guys, and you're welcome to hang out for the remainder of the time, or you can take off if you want. So you kind of pop in if you have questions, comments, concerns. The business is the first half, and then after that, we can have other conversations and that kind of stuff. I want to remind you that the chat is only for questions or comments related to social studies or something school related. And please no playing music on the Google Meets as well, because that can be distracting for the other people and it's tough for me to monitor. So that's it for this lesson today, guys. If you have questions, let me know. Assignments will be posted, and good luck.